It was December 2010, and Suffolk County police officers were combing the desolate dunes of Gilgo Beach, searching for a missing woman named Shannan Gilbert. She had vanished after a frantic 911 call placed from within the quiet suburban community of Oak Beach. As officers pushed through the reeds, their flashlights cut across the sand, and they made a discovery that would forever change Long Island. Instead of finding Shannan, they found human remains. And then another and another. Within days, 4 bodies were uncovered, all women, all sex workers. Soon the number would climb even higher, revealing the presence of serial killer, or killers, using the lonely shoreline as their dumping ground. The victims would later be identified as Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Together, they would become known as the Gilgo Four. Their deaths were brutal, their bodies wrapped in burlap, and their placement so deliberate that investigators knew instantly they were dealing with a predator who had carefully planned his crimes. What began as a missing person search was now a homicide investigation of chilling proportions. But this was only the beginning. Within months, more remains surfaced, scattered further along Ocean Parkway, some dismembered, some unidentified. In total, 10 sets of remains were found by 2011, launching one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries in American criminal history. The press dubbed it the Gilgo Beach murders. The public called it something else, Long Island's House of Horrors.
It began with a single disappearance, a young woman who vanished near the waters of Long Island. No one knew it then, but her absence was only the beginning of something far more sinister. When investigators searched for her, they uncovered a nightmare. One body, then another, and another, each discovery pulling them deeper into a mystery buried beneath the sand. The Gilgo Four were only the beginning. More victims surfaced until the beach revealed its secret, not a sanctuary, but a graveyard. And the killer, still hidden in the shadows.
After the shock of the first discoveries, the Gilgo Beach murders became one of the most frustrating and haunting mysteries in America. By 2011, police had uncovered 10 sets of human remains. Some belonged to the Gilgo Four. Others were partial skeletons, dismembered torsos, or even a toddler. Each victim added the horror, but not to the clarity. Who was the killer, or killers, and why Gilgo Beach? For years, detectives hit wall after wall. Leads went nowhere. Witnesses were scarce. Theories grew wild. Some believed multiple killers were at work. Others suspected organized crime. And some whisper about corrupt law enforcement shielding the predator. As years turned into a decade, the case grew colder, the sands of Gilgo swallowing their secrets. Yet even cold cases are never truly dead. Investigators kept combing through digital records, cell phone pings, and vehicle sightings. One detail stood out. A dark green Chevrolet Avalanche seen near the home of Amber Costello, one of the Gilgo Four, on the night she disappeared in 2010. That lead, though weak at the time, lingered in the files like a puzzle piece waiting for its place. In 2022, Suffolk County's newly formed Gilgo Beach Task Force decided to take a fresh look. The Chevrolet Avalanche lead was revisited, this time with the aid of modern surveillance databases and DMV records. The search narrowed to a name, Rex Heuermann, a Manhattan architect, husband, and father, living quietly in Massapequa Park, just miles from where the bodies were dumped. On the surface, he was a family man, a commuter, a professional. But beneath that ordinary exterior, investigators would soon uncover the darkness of a secret life. After more than a decade of silence, the task force had its suspect. But suspicion alone would not be enough. What followed was one of the most meticulous modern surveillance operations in American history, a careful watch on the architect who neighbors once thought they knew. The hunt for the Gilgo Beach killer was about to break wide open. For more than a decade, Rex Heuermann blended into the rhythm of New York. By day, he was a Manhattan architect, commuting from his modest home in Massapequa Park. To neighbors, he seemed quiet, even awkward, a man who kept to himself. To his family, he was simply Rex, a husband, a father, and a man who worked long hours behind blueprints. But detectives were beginning to see him in an entirely different light. Investigators had been tailing him for months. They knew his Chevy Avalanche matched the description from the Amber Costello case. They knew burner phones used to contact victims had pinged cell towers near his office and home. But the puzzle still needed one final piece: DNA. The break came in a way straight out of a crime drama: a pizza box. Detectives watched as Heuermann discarded a pizza crust into a public trash can outside his Manhattan office. Unbeknownst to him, forensic teams swooped in, retrieving it as evidence. Days later, the results came back. The DNA from the pizza matched the hair found on the burlap that once wrapped Megan Waterman's body. After years of dead ends, investigators had their link. On July 13, 2023, the FBI and Suffolk County Police surrounded Heuermann outside his office near Penn Station. The man who once designed buildings for a living now stood accused of building a trail of death and deception stretching back over a decade. Charged with the murders of 3 women, Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Costello. He was marched into custody as stunned onlookers and reporters crowded the streets. The arrest sent shockwaves across Long Island. Neighbors were horrified. They had known Rex as a man who lived quietly with his wife and kids in a cluttered red house. Now, news vans camped outside their block. The House of Horrors, as tabloids called it, became the center of a gruesome spotlight. While police scoured the property for evidence, digging to the backyard, seizing computers, storage units, and firearms, the community grappled with a chilling reality. They had been living next to a serial killer. But even as he sat in jail, Heuermann's secrets were only beginning to unravel. Investigators believed there were more victims, more hidden truths buried in the past. And the question everyone now asked was terrifying. Had Rex Heuermann been killing in plain sight for years, while no one noticed?
Rex Heuermann now stands accused of killing 7 women and dumping their bodies on Long Island over the course of more than 2 decades.
Rex Heuermann, a New York City architect, is the suspected serial killer they've been hunting for over a decade. He was arrested near his Manhattan office last night.
In the wake of Rex Heuermann's arrest, the image of a hard-working family man shattered into fragments. To the outside world, he was the architect, a man who designed buildings in Manhattan, who carried a briefcase, who lived in a modest house with his wife and 2 children. But behind that facade lurked a darkness that prosecutors say stretched across decades. Neighbors described him as odd, socially awkward, and intimidating. Some recalled how he would stare too long or behave aggressively when approached. One remembered his imposing size, 6'4", over 250 pounds, presence that made people uneasy. Yet no one imagined that within the cluttered walls of his home, police would uncover over 200 firearms, disturbing internet searches, and hidden compartments stuffed with evidence. The digital trail painted an even darker portrait. Investigators revealed that Heuermann had spent late nights on violent pornography sites, searching terms linked to torture, rape, and serial killings. He allegedly scoured the internet for updates on the Gilgo Beach investigation, obsessively following coverage of his own crimes, as if reliving them in secret. Meanwhile, his family claimed they knew nothing. His wife, Asa Ellerup, and their 2 adult children were off and away, when the killings occurred. Detectives believe Heuermann meticulously planned his attacks during windows when his family was out of town, maintaining the illusion of a normal household while leading a monstrous double life. The horror did not end at Gilgo. Authorities suspect Heuermann may be connected to other unsolved murders across the U.S. His name has surfaced in cases from Las Vegas to South Carolina, though no charges have yet been filed. To investigators, the scope of his crimes may stretch far beyond Long Island, a chilling reminder of how predators hide in plain sight. In the courtroom, Heuermann has pleaded not guilty, his lawyers painting him as a scapegoat of a desperate investigation. But the evidence, DNA, burner phones, surveillance records, and his own disturbing searches, forms a picture prosecutors say is undeniable. As he sits in jail, awaiting trial, the world waits too, for justice, for answers, and for the full truth about the architect who built a house of horrors. Massapequa Park, usually a quiet Long Island suburb, turned into the center of a national spectacle in July 2023. After Heuermann's arrest, investigators descended on his red-painted home, transforming the neighborhood into a barricaded crime scene. News vans lined the streets. Neighbors stood in shock as police in hazmat suits carried boxes, evidence bags, and even safes out of the residence. For nearly 2 weeks, forensic teams worked around the clock. What they uncovered stunned even veteran detectives. Inside the cluttered home, described as filthy, falling apart and hoard-alike, they found over 200 firearms, some registered, others modified. Hidden compartments were discovered in the basement, concealing more weapons, ammunition, and disturbing personal items. The search also revealed Heuermann's obsession with the Gilgo murders. Investigators seized burner phones, hard drives, and handwritten notes. Digital forensics later showed years of violent online searches, torture, sexual sadism, child abuse, and serial killers. To prosecutors, this was not just a hobby. It was evidence of a man living inside a fantasy world of violence, one he allegedly acted upon in reality. Neighbors who had long dismissed the home as an eyesore now saw it for what it truly was, a house of horrors hiding in plain sight. One neighbor recalled, "We always said that house was creepy, but we never thought it hid a serial killer." The contrast between the quiet family next door and the gruesome reality inside was almost too much to grasp. The search wasn't limited to the home. Authorities also dug up the backyard, using ground-penetrating radar to search for possible buried remains or hidden evidence. Cadaver dogs were brought in, though no bodies were found on site. The thoroughness of the search reflected investigators' fear that Heuermann's crimes could stretch far beyond the Gilgo Four. When the search concluded, the evidence filled more than 279 bags and boxes. Prosecutors called the cache staggering. The public called it haunting. For the families of the victims, each new detail added another layer of horror, but also, perhaps, another step toward justice. As the case against Rex Heuermann unfolded, the courtroom became more than a place of law. It became a stage where grief, anger, and decades of unanswered questions poured out. For the families of the Gilgo Four, every hearing was another wound reopened, another reminder of the lives stolen and the years spent searching for the truth. The victims, Melissa Barthélemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes, were more than names in a headline. They were daughters, sisters, mothers. Each had struggled with hardships, yet each also carried dreams. Their disappearances had left holes that no passage of time could ever fill. Now, their families sat feet away from the man accused of killing them. In the hearings, Heuermann often appeared emotionless, towering over others in his dark suit, his face expressionless as prosecutors described the gruesome details. His attorneys painted him as an innocent man, claiming the case was built on circumstantial evidence and unreliable witnesses. Yet, the prosecutor's narrative grew stronger. DNA, cell tower records, burner phone data, and eyewitness accounts pointed squarely at Heuermann. For the families, it wasn't just about evidence. It was about reclaiming the dignity of their loved ones. In victim impact statements and interviews, they spoke of birthdays missed, children growing up without mothers, and the pain of being judged because of the victims' lifestyles. They were human beings, one family member said, and they deserved to live. Court documents revealed chilling details. DNA from Heuermann's discarded pizza crust linking him to a victim's hair, burner phones used to arrange meetings, and his obsessive online searches for news about the Gilgo investigation. Prosecutors described a man who thought he could outsmart the system, but whose arrogance and compulsion ultimately betrayed him. Through it all, the families held on to each other. Some cried silently. Others stared at Heuermann with unflinching anger. Each hearing was not only about justice, but also about reclaiming the voices of their daughters and sisters, silenced for too long. Their presence reminded the world. This case was never just about one man's darkness. It was about the light stolen from 4 women who deserved better. Even as Rex Heuermann sits behind bars awaiting trial, the story of the Gilgo Beach murders is far from over. Each week seems to bring new revelations, new searches, and new charges that paint an even darker picture of the so-called secret serial killer architect. In early 2024, prosecutors shocked the public again, announcing additional charges tied to the murders of Maureen Brainerd Barnes and other victims. New forensic analysis revealed previously undetected hairs, traced through mitochondrial DNA, linking back to Heuermann and even to his wife, who was out of town during some of the killings. Authorities believe he may have used her DNA as a shield, inadvertently leaving behind her genetic trace on the crime scene evidence. At the same time, investigators widened their search beyond Long Island. Links were being explored to missing women in Atlantic City, South Carolina, and even Las Vegas. Could Heuermann's travels as an architect and his use of burner phones connect him to a broader trail of violence? Detectives publicly admitted the chilling possibility. The Gilgo Four may not have been his only victims. Meanwhile, the excavation of his Massapequa Park home continues to bear fruit. In the months following his arrest, police returned multiple times, combing to the cluttered basement, backyard, and even tearing up the floorboards. Each visit reignited speculation that more secrets were buried, either physical evidence or digital traces hidden in caches of hard drives. Families of unsolved cases across the country have begun contacting Suffolk County investigators, hoping for answers. Some mothers who lost daughters years ago now wonder if Heuermann's face was the missing link. The uncertainty deepens the horror. How many lives might this one man have destroyed, while quietly designing buildings and living suburban family life? Court proceedings remain ongoing, with prosecutors promising to bring the full weight of the evidence against Heuermann. But for the public, the case represents something bigger. The terrifying reality that evil can live right next door, hidden in plain sight for decades. The Gilgo Beach case has become a modern legend of American true crime, a reminder of how justice moves slowly, but inevitably toward the light.
Investigators later recovered his DNA from a pizza crust he discarded in Manhattan and matched it to genetic material found on the bodies.
Investigators collected Heuermann's DNA from a discarded pizza crust and linked him to a hair found on a burlap covering Megan Waterman's remains.
Also say they used evidence recovered from the 350 electronic devices investigators seized from Heuermann's home, including a significant collection of violent bondage and torture pornography. Officials say some of the images of tied-up women and mutilation are consistent with Mac's injury.
The Gilgo Beach murders are more than just a criminal case. They are a mirror held up to society, reflecting how long it can take for the vulnerable to be heard and how evil can thrive when hidden in plain sight. For over a decade, the marshes of Long Island held secrets that law enforcement couldn't yet unravel. And during that silence, families grieve in isolation, often judged by the world for the lives their daughters led. With Rex Heuermann exposed, the story is no longer just about the monster who lived next door. It's about the women who were taken. Melissa, Megan, Amber, Maureen, and possibly so many more. Their names now carry weight, not as statistics, but as symbols of resilience, reminders of why every victim's story matters. The legacy of fear is undeniable. Neighbors who once waved a quiet architect now wonder how they miss the signs. Parents hold their children closer, and the public has been reminded that sometimes the most ordinary faces conceal the darkest secrets. But alongside fear, there is also determination from law enforcement to connect every missing thread, determination from journalists to keep the spotlight on the victims, and determination from families who refuse to let their loved ones be forgotten. Justice may move slowly, but it moves forward.
My love for Jessica. I'm fighting for her because she can't fight for herself. I just want to say that I'm grateful for the hard work that's been done. I'm grateful that today is happening, and I'm hopeful for the future. I hope that she's remembered as a beautiful young woman, not what her occupation was at that time, and she's loved and missed every day. Full justice is all the cases being closed.
Investigated another case up there in Buffalo with a young lady who died, Amanda Winchowski, in 2009. She was naked. She was a sex worker, heroin addict, and she was naked, frozen, and left upside down inside a garbage can with the top on her, and the police concluded that it was an accidental death. There's connections in various places. We've managed to find some rings that are operating in Buffalo that also connect with California, where Melissa Barthelemy went, Winchowski went, and Shannan Gilbert went, all at the same time to California, where there are other people operating sex rings as well. So this thing could be very far, in a far stretch.
The trial of Rex Heuermann will be remembered as one of the most chilling in American true crime history. But in the end, what survives is not the name of the killer, but the legacy of those he tried to erase. The world now knows the Gilgo Four, and the world will not forget them. In the end, this story is unfinished, but it is no longer silent. The voices that were once lost in the shadows now echo through every headline, every courtroom appearance, and every candlelit vigil. And as the trial unfolds, one question lingers. How many more stories remain buried in the sands of Gilgo Beach, waiting to be discovered?